Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spectator Sports. This is Sebastian Fonseca. In this loaded episode, including a detailed preview of the big game on Super Sunday between the Eagles and Chiefs. We're going to look at all the matchups inside and out and all the major storylines heading into the big game, and also sprinkle in some big time NBA news. We have the All-Star game now with the full roster of both conferences, with LeBron and Giannis being able to pick from them. So we're going to break that down as well, with also a Kyrie Irving trade request. But before we get into this video, please like and subscribe to the page. It makes a massive difference in that YouTube algorithm. And take a look at our Instagram and TikTok pages. And then the audio from this podcast will be up on Spotify just shortly after upload. Super Bowl 57 will be hosted in Glendale, Arizona, home of the Arizona Cardinals. And surprisingly, the winner of this matchup will actually have more wins than the Cardinals have at home all season, as the Cards only won one game, and each of these two teams have beaten the Cardinals earlier in the season in Arizona. So it's going to be a little interesting stat line as well. But also, the bigger thing is that this will be the first time two black quarterbacks will be starting against one another in Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. So it's also good to see that, with just like quarterbacks before, with Doug Williams winning the Super Bowl back in the 80s with the then Washington Redskins, and then later quarterbacks like Steve McNair, Donovan McNabb, and then later Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes being winners of that as well, has been great overall for the NFL, and I'm really excited to see how these two quarterbacks match up. Another big storyline is obviously that head coach Andy Reid of the Kansas City Chiefs used to coach the Philadelphia Eagles back from 1999 to 2012, leading the Eagles to 6 division titles and 5 NFC championship game appearances, including a Super Bowl appearance back in 2004. Now, he did win the big game 3 years ago with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he also followed that up with the Super Bowl appearance in the year following that. So Big Red has had quite the successful career, and him adding a potential second Super Bowl to this already Hall of Fame resume is just going to put him in a different class all time with the other head coaches in the NFL. And then another fun little tidbit of the Super Bowl is that it's going to be the Kelce Bowl. We know about the famous Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce. Travis is the famous tight end of the Kansas City Chiefs. He'll be probably going down as one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end, and have a seat in Canton one day. And his brother has had another nice career as well. I mean, he's been the leader of the Eagles offensive line, a overlooked prospect. I mean, he was a 6th round draft pick back in 2011, and he's become one of the best centers in the NFL, and definitely going to also have a seat in Canton when he hangs up his cleats. It'll be interesting to see what Donna Kelce does. She's been donning the hybrid Kansas City Philadelphia jersey for both her sons, and I think it would be great to see if she could end up being part of the coin toss on Super Bowl Sunday. To get into the matchups, we have to talk about the trenches, and that's how both these teams were built. The Kansas City Chiefs have one of the best pass blocking O-lines in the league, and they're going to be facing their toughest test of the year against a very vaunted Eagles D-line. Look on the right side, as Andrew Wiley will be definitely going up against a guy like Hassan Reddick. Wiley has been one of the best right tackles in the league this year, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he's able to keep Patrick Mahomes upright against Hassan Reddick. On the left, we have Orlando Brown Jr., and he'll be going up against Josh Sweat, most likely, from the left side. Now, Josh Sweat is not the big name like Reddick has been this year, but he has had 11 sacks. He's had a very effective season after having a scary neck injury that caused him to miss a couple of games. He's been back, and he had a postseason sack against the New York Giants. So Orlando Brown also has his hands full on the left side, protecting Mahomes' blind side. In the middle of this Chiefs offensive line, you have Creed Humphrey. He's the second team All-Pro center. He's flanked by Joe Thuney and Trey Smith, and they're really good guards, as well as they're going to have their hands full against guys like Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and even Milton Williams, who's been in the defensive tackle rotation. And don't forget about rookie Jordan Davis, who is their first round draft pick, and he's been really good at eating blocks and double teams, so he will also be in the rotation from the defensive tackle position. As part of this stacked Eagles defensive line, they like to rotate their pieces, and don't forget about Brandon Graham, who is coming off that Achilles injury and entering age 34, but he's managed to have one hell of a season. 11 sacks in this stage of his career is just phenomenal, all career highs. And I think he'll have another big impact in this game, just like he did 5 years ago with that sack against Tom Brady. Their defensive line has been really deep, so look for them to rotate these pieces as to keep the other guys fresh in this game. Switching to the other side, we have the Eagles offensive line going up against the Chiefs defensive line. Now, the Chiefs defensive line obviously is headlined by Chris Jones. He wrecked the game in the AFC Championship game against the Cincinnati Bengals, but this time he's going to have a very tough bout against guys like Jason Kelce, Landon Dickerson, and also Isaac Samaleo in the middle. Now, to talk about the outside, we have Frank Clark, who's been having a resurgent year after a couple down years with the Kansas City Chiefs. In the postseason, he's had a sack in each of the Chiefs' postseason games, so if he wants to continue that hot streak and continue to get pressure in Jalen Hurts' face, he's going to have to get around Lane Johnson, who's been playing just stellar despite the torn groin muscle he sustained late in the season. On the other side, you have George Karlaftis, the standout rookie the Chiefs drafted in the first round, and he'll be going up against Jordan Mailata. Now, they definitely like to switch their defensive ends, so you could definitely see a cross matchup between Karlaftis and Lane Johnson, and then hopefully the favorable matchup in this offensive line would be Frank Clark against Jordan Mailata. As talented as they are, they could definitely have some weaknesses, as Jordan Mailata has given up the most sacks out of the bunch. The Eagles' running attack is definitely one of the league's best, and they're led by Miles Sanders, who's been having a Pro Bowl season, and then he's followed it up with a couple rushing touchdowns against the San Francisco 49ers. But they also have Kenny Gainwell, who's been the Eagles' leading rusher this postseason. He had a 100-yard game against the New York Giants, and definitely provides that kind of spark that the Eagles' running game needs, as he's used out of the backfield as well. So look for him to be in third down situations and be that change of pace running back. But they also have Boston Scott, who's gotten in the action with a couple rushing touchdowns in the postseason as well. So there'll be a very balanced rushing attack. But also Jalen Hurts and his legs will be a big factor as well, being sprinkled into this Eagles rushing attack. For the Chiefs, they have Isaiah Pacheco, who's won the job as a 7th round draft pick to be the Chiefs starting running back. And they also like to sprinkle in Jerick McKinnon out of the backfield as that scat back. So look for them to exploit some matchups against the Eagles linebackers in the red zone in particular. Now, the Eagles have been known to give off some big chunks, as we saw CMC and Saquon have some big plays in the postseason. But since the arrival of Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, the Eagles' run defense has improved quite drastically since mid part of the regular season. So it'll be difficult to run against this Eagles defensive line, but they're definitely susceptible to the occasional big game. The quarterbacks will definitely finish 1 and 2 in the MVP voting. I think Mahomes will end up with the MVP trophy just because he played the entire season, and he definitely has the better passing stats. 41 touchdown passes, over 5,000 yards. I think the dual threat capability of Jalen kept him in the MVP conversation. If he were to be healthy for the entirety of the season, he would have had this MVP trophy. But still, they just have different games, but still very effective, as Mahomes is the scrambler that likes to extend plays with his legs but still look downfield, and Jalen has evolved from just being the run first quarterback to being more of a passer that's taken a huge leap this year. Now, both quarterbacks have been dinged up in this postseason run. We know that Mahomes is coming into this game with that high ankle sprain, but also Jalen Hurts is still showing signs that he's having issues with that SC joint sprain that he suffered in December. So despite both of them having some limitations physically, they're still very dangerous, and I think both of them will have big games in the Super Bowl. For the head coaches, obviously favors a ton of experience for Andy Reid, as this is his fourth Super Bowl appearance. And for Nick Sirianni, this is only his fourth game in coaching in the postseason that he's ever been a part of. It obviously favors Andy Reid, but we do know that experience in these games is a big factor, but it's not the determining factor to winning the Super Bowl. Heading to the outside, the Eagles definitely tout the better collection of receivers, but obviously the Chiefs have the best individual pass catcher in Travis Kelce. He's been having another all-pro season, easily the best tight end in the league, and will go down as one of the best tight ends ever. And I think that chemistry that he's built with Mahomes throughout the years has been just so good that he knows where in the zone to sit down and be that safety valve for Mahomes whenever he gets into trouble. And obviously with this ankle limitation, he'll be under more duress with this Eagles pass rush. As long as he can get the ball out to Travis Kelce, who can get yards after catch, the Eagles will have to be very disciplined in their tackling. Now in the postseason, we've seen the emergence of Marcus Valdes-Scantling getting involved in the passing attack with injuries to Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster. I think Hardman will not be able to make the game, as that hip injury is going to be really nasty to overcome, and I think Juju will have a chance to play and he'll suit up, but I don't know how effective he'll be because that knee swelling is still hindering him. So look for MVS to be heavily involved in this passing attack. They have a really tough matchup with the Eagles secondary led by Darius Slay, James Bradbury, and in the back end they have CJ Gardner-Johnson and then also Marcus Epps in the safety position. Now, they also have some injuries to Avonte Maddox. He did suit up for the NFC Championship game, so he'll be manning the slot. And I think a guy like Jerick McKinnon or Sky Moore could line up in the slot. But you could also see Travis Kelce in the slot as well, so maybe CJ Gardner-Johnson will be matching up in a cover position there. The Eagles pass catchers in Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and Dallas Goedert have been phenomenal for this season. The two receivers in particular have gone over 1,000 yards, but AJ Brown has had a quiet postseason with just 7 catches for 50 yards. I see him having a big game as the lights are shining the brightest. AJ knows that he's due for a big performance, and he has favorable matchups against guys like Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson. And even if Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, decides to bracket or double team AJ Brown, I still like the matchup with Devontae Smith against the Chiefs number 2 cornerback. For my X factors, I'm going to name Marcus Valdes-Scantling of the Chiefs. I think he's just going to be so integral to the Chiefs passing game and really the only healthy wide receiver that the Chiefs have. Sky Moore and Jerick McKinnon definitely are good capabilities as well. I see Jerick McKinnon being utilized in the red zone, particularly as this being a dump-off option in the screen game. And in the secondary, I think Jalen Watson has been having a stellar postseason with interceptions in both of the postseason games so far. So even though he is not the best in coverage, he is able to get his hands on the ball. So if Jalen Hurts isn't careful with positioning the ball, I think Jalen Watson can make him pay the price for that. For the Eagles, I think Dallas Goedert is going to be a huge X factor in this game just because he's so dangerous in the screen game, getting those offensive line, getting blockers in front of him, making moves. He's just such a big man to take down, and then also he can run all the routes in the route tree and be that safety valve for Jalen Hurts in case the two receivers on the outside are covered on particular plays. I also see Quez Watkins. Now, his reps have gone down drastically in the postseason, but I think he's due for a deep play in the Super Bowl. So look for Quez Watkins, and don't forget about Kenny Gainwell. He's already been the Eagles' leading rusher this postseason, but his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield is going to be very dangerous for the Chiefs defense. Defensively, I think CJ Gardner-Johnson being able to match up against a guy like Travis Kelce, at least in coverage, is going to be a big test. And he's been having a streak of interceptions in the regular season, and I think he could make Patrick Mahomes gullible to a potential turnover if he gets his hands on the ball. So for my prediction, I have that this matchup is really going to come down to the trenches, as the pass rush for the Eagles will continue to make its mark like it has had in the postseason. I think they'll be able to limit Patrick Mahomes and keep him at least contained in the pocket. He'll be able to scramble, but not for long, and I think the pass rush will get home. I think 4-5 sacks is very possible for this Eagles pass rush because they can shuffle in bodies. Now, if the Chiefs do go no huddle, they can limit the Eagles substitutions. I do think that the Eagles pass rush is still conditioned enough to get home and get in the face of Patrick Mahomes. I see the Eagles ground game also being able to make its mark on this game. So with them having the advantage in time of possession, just keeping Mahomes on the sideline, because when he's on the sideline, he can't hurt you. If they get one of those 8-9 play drives of 6-7 minutes, just exhausting the defense and wearing them down, especially in the second half, I think that is definitely advantage Eagles. So the Eagles have been consistently the best team all season. They have a lot of strengths and very few weaknesses. And if they just keep the turnovers to a minimum like they have this entire postseason, I see them winning the Super Bowl this year. The Eagles are the better team coming into this Super Bowl matchup, and they've been the best team in the NFL in 2022. So I'm picking the Philadelphia Eagles to culminate this dominant year and winning the Super Bowl. Jaylen Brown making his second All-Star appearance, and then Bam Adebayo with his second. Drew Holiday, after a 10-year wait, he's been able to make his second All-Star appearance. DeMar DeRozan with his sixth. Julius Randle with his second. And then Tyrese Halliburton of the Indiana Pacers coming in with his first ever All-Star appearance. So for my snubs, I think definitely you have to start off with Jalen Brunson. He's been having a great year in year one with the New York Knicks, and I think his play definitely deserved to be rewarded in that. Trae Young is definitely another candidate. I just think with his stats has been great with 27 and 9.9 assists. I mean, that is just stellar play. I know the Hawks haven't been the greatest team, but Trae Young is still a phenomenal player and definitely deserves to make the All-Star team. Also, Pascal Siakam. I mean, he's been having a stellar year, and he's been a victim of his team's lack of success, and that's probably why he's not on the All-Star roster right now. I think out of all of these, it definitely just depends on injuries, but I'd hope to see at least 2 out of those 3 guys I mentioned be able to make the team in some capacity. In the Western Conference, we have Ja Morant making his second appearance, Domantas Sabonis making his third, Damian Lillard making his 7th, Paul George making his 8th appearance, and then some first-time selections in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jaren Jackson Jr. And I think that's the biggest one that I'm pretty shocked about, that he made it over a guy like De'Aaron Fox of the Sacramento Kings. Jaren Jackson has been solid, but he's missed a ton of time, and you got to think about the impact that De'Aaron Fox has had with the Sacramento Kings. The Kings are 3rd in the Western Conference right now, and Fox has been playing great. Also got to talk about Anthony Edwards. I think Anthony Edwards has been phenomenal for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and despite them being on the edges of the play-in tournament, they've somehow been able to catapult into the 7th seed, so they're firmly entrenched in the upper part of the play-in tournament, and that's without them having Karl Anthony Towns for a significant portion of the season. I think if I were to tweak this a little bit, I would probably take out either Dame or Paul George maybe. I just think those 2 guys they've been great, but their teams haven't been great, and the 2 kids have been a little bit better. Now, the starters, definitely think that Zion could end up missing the game because he's been out for quite some time and the Pelicans have been in free fall. Maybe one of these 2 make it in as a injury replacement, but they have to be forward, so maybe not. In the East, I mean, they're definitely rewarding DeMar's stat line, but the Bulls haven't been that great, so I would maybe swap out him for Jalen Brunson, and depends on how you define DeMar. If he's a guard, then you could put in Jalen Brunson, but if not, if he's a forward, you would definitely have to put in Pascal Siakam. LeBron James has now passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, as now he's become the NBA's all-time leading scorer, and this is a record that many have tried to go after, but they have failed just due to injuries or just their play has dropped off, or just, them being a victim of father time. And LeBron has been able to keep it up in his age 38 season, 20th year in the league, and he's averaging 30 points a game. That is just unbelievable that he's doing it at this stage of his career with that many miles on his body. Now, he's definitely been a guy that has done some load managing, and he's been able to keep the minutes down at certain points of the season, but still been very consistent despite aging. Now, we do know that he invests $1.5 million a year into his body, and you can see it in his play and in his fitness. I mean, he's keeping Father Time at bay as best as he can, and I do see that he's going to probably play for at least 3 years, and that's going to send him up to at least 40,000 points in his career. I don't know if anybody else is going to be able to have this amount of longevity that LeBron has. I mean, they would have to average 27 points a game for 24 years, possibly. That is going to be really interesting to see if anybody could ever catch LeBron's record that will be adding on for as long as he decides to play. Even so, I think this is just a testament to his career and what he's been able to do. Now, we could talk about the GOAT debate another time, but we have to at least at this point in time celebrate LeBron's latest amazing accomplishment. It's looking like Nikola Jokic could average a triple-double in this historic season that he's having and probably locking up his third consecutive MVP trophy. And this, I think, is probably the best 3-year stretch of basketball that we see by one individual in the modern NBA. Now, we know about the 3 Russell Westbrook triple-double seasons, and then he had a 4th with the Washington Wizards. Now, I think that Russ has been able to take away the value of a triple-double just because these have been a lot of stat padding. You can just see that the rebounds have been left by Steven Adams or whoever the big is, to give Russ the ball early and get the ball out in transition or on the break sooner than later. Now, in this season, what Nikola Jokic is doing with this potential triple-double season, it's translated to winning, where the Nuggets are the top team in the Western Conference, not in the middle of the pack. Like Russell Westbrook, in the other 2 triple-double season, he was a 4th seed and then a 6th seed, and both times he got knocked out in the first round. Now, if the Nuggets are able to advance to the conference finals, if not the NBA finals for the first time in franchise history, I would say that this potential triple-double season by Nikola Jokic would be much better or much more impactful than any of Russell Westbrook's triple-double seasons. The Western Conference standings were shuffling around quite a bit for the earlier part of the season, with the Suns having it for a bit before falling off due to injuries. Then we saw the Pelicans, and then they fell off. We saw the Memphis Grizzlies, but they've relinquished control. And now the Denver Nuggets have had a really good run. They are in the Western Conference's top seed with a solid 4-game lead over the Memphis Grizzlies at this point of this recording. And I think we have to really take this Nuggets team seriously. They're led obviously by MVP candidate Nikola Jokic, who is averaging a triple-double, and they have a lot of talent around him now, with KCP being an excellent marksman from the outside. He's been averaging a blistering 48% from deep, and with the injuries finally in their favor, they do get Jamal Murray back, who's been really good, and also Michael Porter Jr., who's been a consistent option from the forward position. Don't forget about Aaron Gordon. I mean, he's just been so phenomenal, being a good rebounder and just providing some extra force on the boards for Nikola Jokic. And big credit to Mike Malone. I mean, he's been able to orchestrate this Nuggets team to perfection, and they've been like a well-oiled machine. So I'm really thinking that the Nuggets will be a true title contender, and we'll see if they can make the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. We have some breaking news on Sunday afternoon. The Brooklyn Nets have traded Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks, and they received Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, a 2029 first-round pick, and a bunch of second-round picks. Obvious winners here are the Dallas Mavericks, as they get to pair Luka Doncic with an all-star caliber guard in Kyrie Irving. And I think the fit will be pretty seamless, as we've seen Kyrie fit well with guys like KD and LeBron, especially LeBron James, because his game is very similar to Luka Doncic. And in terms of Luka playing off ball, we haven't seen that a lot during his career, but it's been evident in his time in Europe, so I think that won't be too big of an adjustment. But especially when Kyrie is off ball, he's been great at the catch and shoot, so Luka will be able to find certain positions to put Kyrie in success on the wings. And for the Mavericks, this just takes an immense amount of pressure off of Luka Doncic. I mean, he's been tasked to shoulder the load in the offense and orchestrate everything from his rookie season, and he's been able to carry the Mavericks at least to the Western Conference playoffs. But after a while, defenses can key in and be able to limit him and his teammates' ability to make plays. With Kyrie Irving in the lineup, this allows Luka to play a little bit more off ball, like I said, and now he gets a chance to get a little bit more rest. He can chill on offense. And overall, I think now with them sitting at the 6th seed in the Western Conference, they can make a few moves to catapult themselves up the Western Conference standings. For Brooklyn, this has been a big fall from grace. I mean, at one point they had James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, arguably the best big three on paper, and due to injuries we only got to see them for maybe 15-16 games in the 2021 season. And last season, after they traded James Harden at the deadline to the Philadelphia 76ers, this year they traded Kyrie. Only remains is Kevin Durant, and I definitely see him on the move either by the trade deadline, if not by the offseason this summer. And it's been just an epic collapse by the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, they just had a huge opportunity to make a name for themselves in the city of New York, either get to the conference finals, if not the finals, and even win the whole title. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this trade and what the outlook could be on the Dallas Mavericks moving forward. So that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take a look at the links in the description, follow the Instagram and TikTok pages, like this video, subscribe to the page, all greatly appreciated. The next episode will be a detailed recap of the Super Bowl. And until next time, I'll see you then. Take care. Be safe.